What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video we are doing the 86th installment of Retro Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing my Gemini Jets 1:400 scale Frontier Airlines Convair 580. This aircraft in real life has quite a storied history, but we'll get more to that towards the end of this video. But we have a very lovely retro Gemini Jets model, which has been made during their big retro craze within the last several years. Pretty much throughout the 2020s, they have been really good with doing some pretty awesome retro US subjects, though there are still plenty that have yet to be made, but I am somewhat confident that we will get to see those eventually. So that said, we'll go ahead and get started with the box, which is pretty unique for Gemini Jet standards. So to start off, we have the normal logo made for collectors by collectors, and then instead of the typical image that they use, they actually have a real-life aircraft image that they have used instead, which is a photo by a gentleman named Bob. I can't pronounce his last name correctly, but he took this photo at Albuquerque International Sunport in June of 1969. And I believe I have looked up this gentleman before. I think he's got a really extravagant jet photos profile, or maybe like airliners.net or something, but if I look it up again, yeah, he's got a really awesome jet photos page with a lot of awesome old aircraft photos. So I will link that in the description if you are curious to see a lot of like 1960s, 1970s US aviation. There's a lot of really good photos that he has there, so I will be sure to link that down there. Has not uploaded anything new since 2007, so I don't know much about his current status, but I hope his family is doing well, if he has since passed, unfortunately, but I don't know for sure. But if he is still around, I hope he's doing well, and hope that he loves the fact that Gemini Jets has used his photos on some of the releases. They also did it with the Northwest Electra, which I also have, and hopefully, actually no, I already did a retro review installment on that, so go check that out as well. So let's go ahead and bring in this very lovely model into view. This was announced in the June 2022 batch, which was about a few weeks before I went to my first ever Airliners International convention in Chicago. I was hoping they would make it in time for that, but they were announced pretty late, so they did not make it, and ultimately I got this in around October of that same year. So a few months later, once I'd gotten into college and all that, I bought this and the Braniff Electra together. The Braniff was a new release at the time, and I remember unboxing both of them in my dorm room. It is crazy to think that's almost 3 years ago. I started college and now I'm about to finish, which is a bit scary to think about. But everyone's been through those types of life changes, so I'm sure I'll be able to get through it just fine myself. So here she is, Frontier Convair 580. This is the older livery, which I like to call the crescent livery because the tail logo kind of looks like a crescent, though there's like an arrow that's also sticking out of it, so there might be a different name for this livery as well, and if you know that, please leave a comment. The newer Saul Bass livery, no one has done a Convair 580 of that yet in 400 scale. Gemini did a 1:200 release many years ago, but they have not done a 400 scale release. So hopefully that comes to fruition at some point, because that would look nice alongside this bad boy right here. It's my only Frontier aircraft that I have in this livery. I don't have much desire to get their jet aircraft like the 727 or the 737 in this livery, since the Saul Bass livery was more prominent, at least when Frontier flew to Sioux Falls, and even then they typically just flew the 732. They never sent the 727s or the MD-80s here, maybe on rare occasions, but I've never found any official documentation to support that. So to start off, we've got the nose cone. There's the cockpit windows. There's a little anti-glare shield just underneath that as well. Jet Power 580 printed here, since the Convair 580 is a converted Convair like 440 essentially, or like a 240 with Allison turboprop engine. So they're technically like a jet engine, but they just have a propeller on the front. So it's a turboprop aircraft in this case, Allison built. And specifically, should list the engines in here. They are Allison 501-D13H. So that's what this aircraft had when it was flying with Frontier here. So up on the top, there's the Frontier titles along with a very lovely blue cheat line. It's kind of like, I don't know how to describe this blue color properly. It's like a muted sky blue in a way. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase that, but it's very different compared to other blues I've seen. It appears a little more vibrant on camera than to my naked eye. It does look a little more sky bluish, but to my naked eye, it appears a bit darker. There's the rear boarding door right there, and the last passenger window, which they're all square on this. Registration is November 73117, and there's the lovely Frontier tail with the little arrow, crescent, and then the little airline titles. There's a good look at the Allison engines on this aircraft. The props do spin. This one seems to be a bit tight. I'm not sure if they just glued that one in there a little more tight. And this one barely spins because I think... No, it does not. Well, it kind of touches the fuselage a little bit, so they put the engines a bit too close or made the props too big. So, yeah, these ones don't really spin that freely. You can kind of see the inner workings of how it's attached, because there's like a hub that goes into the little insert for the engine on the wings, and then that's how it spins. On this side, there's the 580 jet power titles there. Landing gear, which looks a little bent up on that side, but not a big deal. The wheels are kind of messy on this. Yeah, they didn't really figure out the landing gear stuff in 2022 yet, but more things to come for that. And then there's a Frontier tail on that side. And then as we check out the underneath of the aircraft, all polished underneath with the Gemini Jets logo, a stand hole, and the various wing details. And on the top there, also prevalent with some overwing exit markings also there. So there is the Frontier Convair 580. And as I said at the top of the video, this is a very storied aircraft. A lot to tell with this. So let's go ahead and get started. This aircraft first flew around 1952, and it got delivered to United in November of that year. And presumably this would have started out as a Convair 240 model, and then sometime later on it would get converted to a 580 model. It went to Frontier in March of 1966, so I suspect that this aircraft is being depicted roughly around the late 60s, early 70s, just like what the photo is on the box. After Frontier started to phase out the Convairs, they went to Aspen Airways in December of 1989, and then just under a year later, her next operator was Golden Gate Airlines, and during their time there, she was leased to a company called ERA Helicopters. So I'm not sure what their purpose was for this aircraft, if it was used as like a corporate charter or something. Not sure much about that. She then went to Sierra Pacific a few years later in March of 1983, and then in November of 1984, she went to Metroflight, which was operated by American Eagle, and Gemini Jets did release this aircraft with that same livery, but it was in 1:200 scale in October of 2012. Here's a photo of that aircraft. She was there for just under 4 years, about 3.5 or so. Next operator was Saab Aircraft Holdings, starting in February of '88. Then she went overseas to European Air Transport in April of 1989, re-registered to Oscar-Delta Hotel Golf, and she flew with DHL colors from that point on. She then went to Swift Air in July of 1995, re-registered to Echo Charlie-943. Now that Echo Charlie aircraft registration prefix I'm not too familiar with. So just taking a quick look to see where that originates from. That would be a Spanish registration. So yeah, that does make sense there. Didn't ring a bell to me right away just because of the numbers in front of it instead of letters like how it typically is. She did get full letters eventually in October of 95, re-registered again to Echo Delta-Golf Delta Yankee. Then she went to South Africa in June of 2005, so she soldiered on for about 53 years or so. Skyhall took her in June of 05, re-registered her to Zulu Sierra-Sierra Kilo Golf. And originally I couldn't find much more information, but then I found a webpage that talks about Convair aircraft that are in South Africa. And it said that she was retired in 2009, but then scrapped in 2012. So that's a lot of history with this aircraft. Certainly a very fascinating aircraft, and probably why Gemini chose this registration, even if they already made it in their larger scale, but I don't think they've made it in 400 scale, so they had more of a reason to choose it in 400 scale. With that being said, that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.